Hey, Baruch Levi, be here from Defiant Spirit. You can always learn more about Defiant Spirit at defiantspirit.org. It's my newest business venture. Ariella and I are still happily married, but happily each sharing our own particular passions. Hers around, of course, healing, alternative healing, generational healing, and shamanism, really some amazing stuff. And me around all things Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning and 40 other books, and founder of Logotherapy. I'm a logotherapist. His work, bringing it into people's lives individually, but now bringing it into people's lives vis-a-vis the Enneagram. I've merged both his work and the Enneagram, a personality system, typing system, together. Don't think it's a thing. I think I am that thing. We all have to have a niche. That's my niche. That's my passion. Viktor Frankl really reminds me that, he or she who has a why can endure anyhow, is him quoting Nietzsche. And that's the why. And so really finding meaning and purpose of what Frankl talks about. And that's what I help people do: find meaning, purpose, and then live it. Well, how? How is the Enneagram? And so I have been working hard over the past year to formally merge these two amazing systems. And I've done it. I say it's relatively complete. It's not 100% complete, but the system is there. It's called Defy Your Number. Jump over to defiantspirit.org, defiantspirit.org, and you can learn more about it. I have people take an Enneagram assessment. If you already know your type, then I can just get you into the program. I do have a workbook and a video series that are coming out, but for now it's an ebook with everything you need to know about your number. And then I work with people one-on-one, and I'm doing more and more work in business settings using the Enneagram around leadership and around communicating more effectively, impactfully, to live our why in our home environment, in our professional lives. And this shows you how. I want to share with you just a little bit about Enneagram 4. Enneagram 4 over here. Whoa. Wipe out. Right there. It's hard to do this backwards. Did you ever try this? Okay, there it is. Enneagram 4. The romantic, the artist, the individualist, doesn't matter what you call it. Different systems call it different things. But I did a podcast recently on Enneagram 4. Prior to that, 3, 2, and 1. So I'm just going through around the Enneagram. And then I'm also doing it with my good friend and partner on all things financial, Michael Feiner. So Michael and I have adapted the Enneagram in each type towards money, finances, and investment strategies. So you can listen to Enneagram for the individualist, or Enneagram for the what are calling it, the alternative investor. And in either of those podcasts, there's a link in the comments below. You will learn about who this 4 is. Again, 4 at the bottom there. This part of the Enneagram, by the way, is the most kind of sort of, not kind of sort of, it is definitively the most sophisticated, complex, intricate. That's why it's on this side of the Enneagram. It's the shadow side, and we need shadows. It's where the creative juice comes out of, which is why 4s and 5s tend to be disproportionately the artists. Not all 4s and 5s are artists, but most successful 4s and 5s you think of, like J.K. Rowling, a 4, or the 5s are more like Stephen King. But these are really sophisticated, kind of challenging figures. And the 5 side will get you the next time, much more cerebral. 4 is much more emotional. So when you think of 4s, I think of a lot of brooding artists. I think a lot of sophisticated emotional types like Ariella, my wife. Therapist, healers come out of this 4 side of things. 4s really revolve around the depth of emotion. So 2, 3, and 4 are all the feeling types. But 2s kind of go outward with their emotions, so they tend to be very good with other people's emotions, maybe not with their own. 3s go away from emotions, so they become more efficient and success driven. They're emotional types. You just don't know it always. And then 4s go inwards, so they have this depth like no other type. My son, Aviv, is a 4. He's 11. I hope my other kids aren't listening, but he's the most emotionally sophisticated, except for Ariella, in the house. He looks at me sometimes because I'm an 8. I'm like, I'm both intense, but I'm also very playful. Immature might be another way of saying it. I like to call it playful. But Aviv and Ariella will look at me sometimes like, Ariella will look at me like she married down, and Aviv will look at me like we got the roles reversed. So fours just have this depth of character, of they just understand. They have a higher EQ, I think, than most types. So if you look at the fours in culture, society, it's the people like John Lennon, Bob Dylan. I think of Leonard Cohen as a quintessential four. James Taylor, I think, was a four. You have just some Jackson Pollock, a four. So you have some very sophisticated, lots of musicians are fours. Now, with that comes a price, because down here, very heavy, intense stuff. If they don't learn how to, get out of some of that shadow work and bring in some light and lighter side of their life, they can be swallowed up by the darkness. And lots of four artists have been. It's kind of eerie, but if you look at many, maybe not all, but most of the artists who have taken their lives or died of drug overdoses, you know, um, like Judy Garland, I'm just reading from the list. Judy Garland, Billie Holiday, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, Michael Jackson, Naomi Judd, Prince, Jim Morrison, Sid Vicious, Kurt Cobain. Fours, 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 fours. So they can pay a heavy price for this depth of emotion. And if they don't stand guard against it, I am not, certainly, God forbid, not saying that all fours will succumb to that darkness, but fours really need to deal with the darkness. I see it in the people I guide who are fours. They live much closer to suffering, to really understanding that life can be incredibly, incredibly painful. They don't have that ability to compartmentalize. Certainly not like the threes or the sevens. They just live. Milan Kundera, in his book, I think it later was a movie, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. That is a very fourish feel. So they feel more deeply. When my son found out that his cat died maybe 6 months ago, 4 months ago, it hit all my kids hard, but it hit him the hardest. And he's had a very hard time sort of shaking that suffering off of him. So they don't always recover so easily. Now, I think that can be quite a beautiful thing. I hear all the time in our society, people are uncomfortable with fours, with four-like qualities. So we try and get past it. And especially I hear it around grief. A four would never say to you, it's time to move on already. Fours don't move on ever. If you have lost a loved one and you have this four Enneagram type, you'll never move on. You'll move forward, but you'll never move on. And I think that's a beautiful quality that a fours can teach us. We carry this pain and suffering forward. My teacher, Viktor Frankl, I think was a four. For this reason, he writes all about the four horrors that he experienced, the horrors he experienced as a four in the Holocaust. And he also quotes quite a few sources that talk about carrying one's burden, one's suffering forward as an act of duty, as an act of service. How do you find meaning in the darkness? This is some of the primal work of a four. Don't forget, just because you're not an Enneagram type four doesn't mean you don't have four in you. We all have four in us. Question is how high do we rank it? How easily do we access it? How often do we turn to it? The truth is, in our society, not enough. If you want to read some great books on the four quality that's not part and parcel of our society, read books by Susan Cain. Susan Cain is a four. I think she said she's a four. If not, I read that she's a four, but she certainly writes like a four. Her first book, Quiet, is all about introversion and how introversion is shunned in our society. We revere extroverts like threes, twos, but fours tend to get kind of sidelined as if it's a negative, when in fact, introversion has its place. We need introversion. We all have that within us. There's times to go inwards. There's time to go outward. Read Susan Cain's book, Quiet, on that aspect of the four. And then another aspect of the four, Bittersweet, her most recent book, amazing, amazing. Probably going to annoy sevens and some of the lighter types out there, but good. You need to be annoyed. Susan has a lot to offer, and this book, Bittersweet, is really based around her love of Leonard Cohen, a four, and the darker side of life and how that needs to be brought back into the conversation because there are shadows. And just because we pretend they're not there doesn't mean they go away. I wrote about this in my book, Spark Seekers. Shadows, darker stuff doesn't go away, it goes underground. And when it does, it becomes toxic. Well, fours teach us how to go inwards, how to go deeper. I think Carl Jung probably was a four, how to go into those shadows, to take back the energy, the power of that four quality, and to use it, to not be used by it, so that we don't end up succumbing to it, drowning in the four creative dark side of life, but to use it as a source of motivation and inspiration. And that's really the four. Jump over to defiantspirit.org, where you can find the podcast about four and much more. Reach out to me and we can do your Enneagram assessment. If you've done them before and they're free, well, you're getting what you pay for in life, and free sucks. Sorry, wish you didn't, but it does. That's why it's free. If you work with me, I use $120 Enneagram assessment, and that's part of the cost of working with me. It's built into what I offer, and then you get the premium product. It is like a 95 to 99% accuracy rate. It gets into some of the nuances, no, a lot of the nuances, and then I put them into my system, the Defy Your Number program, and you will have an Enneagram approach that is both scientifically kind of data driven, but also spiritual, psychological, lots of fun stuff I have in there. If this type was an animal, if this type was a country, if this type was a musical genre. And so lots of fun stuff, light stuff, lots of deep stuff, lots of good stuff, all there, because the Enneagram is probably the most practical and impactful system I have found for living my life, for being in relationship, for navigating more effectively, more purposefully, more powerfully. It's a roadmap to how to live the true you. You're not a number. We're here to defy our number and to live our true self, our true you, your spirit. So defy your number, live your spirit, reach out to me. Love to connect to you. Until the next time, peace.